All right, peace, and power. Welcome to another podcast and book club. We charge colonialism. I am Ikemba, the host of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club, organizer with International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement as well, NPDM for short. Community organizer, professor of history, and happy to be back. Frank, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Good morning. This is Frank, host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series.
All right. Natasha, who's also a third panelist, who's part of this podcast, will not be with us today. She'll be back next week. I'm pretty sure she's studying hard right now, working on her doctorate's degree. So peace to Natasha, get that work done. So me and Frank going to hold it down this morning. Want to appreciate everybody that's tuning in to our podcast and book club. We're continuing our study of the ISIS papers by Dr. France Cress Welsing. We do that in the second half of our podcast and book club. We'll be reading chapter 2 of that book. There is a link to the book in our Google Drive. So if you shortly, I'll put the Google Drive in the chat. So for those who want to read along with us, you'll be able to do that. Before we get into the reading of the book, though, we usually do our weekly roundup. Before we get into the weekly roundup, though, I want to say rest in power to Jordan Neely. Jordan Neely, who was a resident in New York City, who was recently murdered by some vigilantes on the metro, the public transportation, the metro train station in New York City. From what I know now, the death has been ruled a homicide, but the killer of Jordan Neely is still on the streets. That's the latest news that I have. He was taken in question after the murder and was released. So continue to, for all those who are not familiar with the case, look into the case of Jordan Neely, and, make a call to the DA, make a call to the police station, and to let them know that this murderer, is still on the streets and needs to be arrested. If he could do it to Jordan Neely, he can do it to anyone, right? And Jordan Neely was a homeless man with mental health issues. It's been crazy how they've been demonizing him. This isn't even part of the weekly roundup, but I thought it was important to put that information out there. So before we get into the weekly roundup, I'm going to ask everybody, peace to everyone who's viewing now. But to anybody that's viewing this podcast and book club, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like and you share this as well. All right, so we can have more people a part of these discussions. It's important that we, as an independent media group, that we're able to put out a narrative that's going to be conducive to the liberation of African people, right? So we're combating a lot of propaganda out there. We're combating the media machine. The only way that we can do that is with your support. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as well. Our information's in the description. So with that being said, though, we'll get into our weekly roundup. Frank, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. There's an article here that I want to share from the prison system, the federal prison. So, just for people to understand, we are still on a plantation, okay? So the system will always find a way to benefit from the system that they create or created. So there's an article here, I'm going to read, and then I will explain, just in addition. So it says, federal prison want inmate to pay victim before making phone call or buying shoes, or even before paying attention to their own needs. So they want for the prisoner to pay the victim. So it says here, every month, Renee Holland sent her son, Billy Sanders, $75. His He's been incarcerated for the last 6 years. So he uses the money for things like over-the-counter medication, shoes for his job, or meetings on the phone. So let me just leave that right there. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Let me take it out. So that's a new rule the federal system is coming up with within the prison system. So and what the reason why they brought this out, bear in mind now, right? In this time period, we have seen over and over celebrity, all right? I would say black celebrity, okay, that have been taken to the prison system, like Arakete, right? He have money, right? Like we saw Bill Cosby, right? He have money, a lot of them. So what they are trying to do now, instead of the prison, how they call it, taking the knee of these people, right? So they are now going against, let's say, to these people, exploiting them, getting their money from them to pay victims. So instead of the prison system being responsible for these prisoners, rather the prisoner will be responsible for themselves to pay the victim and all of those things. So those prisoners will just be in there working free, okay, for those that have the prison system. So for example, somebody like Arakade, they know he got money in a bank. So instead of the prison system paying for Arakade, Arakade would rather be the one paying, the finances and thing, and then working in a prison system for the people that have the business, or because we know the prison system is a business. So that's the new rule they're trying to bring in now. So you have to pay all these fees, all these fines, and then before you can even cater to your own needs. So it's like this. So if you have your relative in the prison system, for example, I am sending money, XYZ will not receive all of those money. So for example, I send $100 or I send $200. So they're going to take maybe like $100 and then put it towards the victim, and then they send me the $100, or take $150, put it towards the victim, and then give me the $50, and for my own self gains and stuff. So that's the new rule, how they call it, they're trying to bring out and within the prison system. So again, the business is just increasing for them. They are just trying to, because as we all know, things are getting difficult. The economy is getting difficult. So they are trying to, make more money. So if, it's just another form of exploitation. So I don't know how best I can explain that, but exploitation is just, at a higher peak. So let it bear in mind, colonialism, slavery is still happening. Slavery did not end. So it's just, being sophisticated in a very, comprehensive way.
Ooh, my brother, thank you for bringing this story to the people. I'm going to share a link in the chat. This is uh, a documentary based off of the book with the same title, "Slavery by Another Name." This is the link to the documentary, which can be found on YouTube. But that's what was coming to mind as you were talking. Michelle Alexander, she writes "The New Jim Crow" in the night, that explains what took place in the 80s with mass incarceration, the 70s and the 80s. There's a lot of I think good text. Sister by the name of Elizabeth, is it Hinting? I think she writes a book called "America on Fire," and there's another piece that talks about the strategy that has been used by the state to incarcerate our brothers and sisters, African people in the States in particular, right? Which connects to the 13th Amendment. So we understand the 13th Amendment, which abolishes slavery, has an exception in there. It says slavery is abolished except for the punishment of a crime. And so this was a way, after the chattel slavery was dismantled and destroyed in this country, there was a way to put those formerly enslaved Africans who were on those plantations back into a system of slavery through the penal system. And so there was convict leasing, there was peonage that existed, the chain gangs, all of these things. But just to show the connection, uh, how a people who are put in a situation where they're not able to take care of themselves for whatever reasons. Sometimes these reasons are well, most of the time these reasons are unjustified because of result of criminalizing African people. And what happens is once they're in the system, they're unable to take care of themselves. So what happens, right? They have this dependency on the state. Now they have to work for these corporations. You have brought up the thing where there's money being sent to them, but those resources are being diverted, for the use of whoever the victim was, right? But what happens if they're unable to pay the victim, though? It kind of like creates it creates a situation where now the person can be punished even more because of these resources that may be owed to the victim, based on the crime that they cannot pay. So they find themselves in a cycle of slavery as a result of this. Like this, so many things. So, we have to be very clear that, even before they are incarcerated, before they reach the penitentiaries, it's a system of colonialism that creates these conditions where these crimes are happening at a rate in our community. I'm not even going to say a higher rate because colonialism makes it look like Africans are committing all the crimes, but we represent the bottom class in the system of colonialism, and so they have to keep us in a state of subjugation. And one of those ways is to criminalize us and have a pretext for putting all these police in our community, incarcerating us at a high rate, not putting resources in our community. Because as Jay-Z said one time, and I'll leave it here because there's just so much about this, but as Jay-Z said one time, why would I give money? It was a question asked, like, why doesn't he give resources to Marcy Projects where he grew up? And he said something about the attitude of the people in Marcy Projects. And he was like, if I give them money, basically, it would be a waste to give them money because they have a particular mindset. But if that's the case, why do colonizers come into our community, invest in our communities? He has such a problem with investing in the community somewhere he came from, but there's people from outside of the community who's coming and see value in the community, not in the people though, but in the community. So with that being said, like nobody's asking for handouts, but why isn't he invested in Marcy and creating infrastructure? But the reason I bring this up is because it's the same thing when it comes to the African community, where the colonizers, they'll use this excuse of not putting resources in our community because, oh, look at the mindset of these people. Not that they created the conditions that we are in, not that they created the colonial conditions, not that they put us in a state of slavery and impoverishment, but look at the mindset, look how they're living, and this goes to redlining, right? Redlining where we all know where they say, hey, it's a high risk for us to invest in these communities. So the cycle of slavery, continues. So I'm just trying to make some connections, man. Appreciate you bringing this story. If there's anything else you wanted to add, go right ahead.
Yeah, and let me just add on here from the comment here. Let me just add. Dennis says, so the sender and the inmate get robbed by the imperialist system. Of course, yes, and that is why exactly going to happen. And even in addition to what Dennis just wrote, what's going to happen here is that, of course, okay, people are going to use this system, all right, to lie. Of course, what been going on, lying on black men about rape. Okay, so people are going to use this system to lie on black men of rape cases, and then you're going to go to jail, all right, and then you're going to be paying money. So the victim going to sit at home now and be getting money. So there's an extra income are going to be coming towards the victim. You see, so the victim will sit at home while you're in jail, and then every month, free money is coming to the victim. So people are going to use this to exploit the system to get a lot of Black people in jail. The same way the police use, how they call it, or drugs. They plant fake drugs in your car, okay? And then they say you are in possession of marijuana and all of those things, and they take you to jail just to have more Black people in the prison system. This is what exactly going to also happen, where people will be lying on Black people about rape cases and things, and then they will put them in jail just to have extra income coming in. And these are the things that are going to happen. So I don't know. It's getting ugly out here. So we just have to be careful on in the neighborhood that you're going to find yourself in, where to go, neighborhood that you need to go, neighborhood that you need not to go, and those things.
Yeah, that's another good point. Before we go into the other story, is that that's a great thought, because the way our communities are so divided as a result of colonialism, and because of the system of capitalism, where everyone's looking for a way to acquire resources, this is another way. It's an incentive to criminalize, as an individual person in the community. Like, we criminalize each other, and say, hey, I'm the victim of this particular crime, the most pettiest, crimes, things that we may be able to handle among ourselves. Why not, get the police involved, get this person incarcerated, because this is a way that I can attain some resources. So yeah, and it doesn't solve any problems. It's only going to exacerbate the situation. So again, appreciate the story. We're going to move on. Uhuru to all the comrades, man, that's tuning in. Appreciate y'all. Peace to the family. Everybody that's in the chat and support. Make sure you like and share too, so we can get as many people part of these discussions. So I'm gonna go into this next story. Most recently, the leaders of the African People's Socialist Party, African People's Solidarity Committee, have been indicted. There was indicted by the FBI, and so they're fighting these charges of conspiring with Russians and so forth. But this has been an attack on a movement that is fighting for freedom. And I just wanted to play this Tucker Carlson clip on Fox News. And Tucker Carlson recently got fired, and I'm not making a correlation between his firing and this particular story, but who knows though. I know that Fox recently was involved in a case, and he made some white supremacist comments. So Tucker Carlson, we know he's definitely not a friend, but it was exposed that he made these comments about these white guys who jumped somebody, and he made a comment saying, this isn't the white people's way, or this isn't how white people do things. So it was very, very racist, and so they're trying to connect his firing to that as well. But this particular clip I want to show right here, I want to discuss this because it does expose the contradictions with the state and when African people are fighting for freedom. I think we should be aware of what's happening with those leaders of the Uhuru movement as well. So let me share my screen. This is Fox News. This is that's making these comments. Here we go.
Push back against it. So this trend continues. The latest group of Americans to find their constitutionally protected opinions become felonies are, believe it or not, an organization of Black nationalist left-wingers who oppose the war in Ukraine. The DOJ has just charged many in this group with seeking to, quote, sow discord, spread pro-Russia propaganda, and interfere in elections within the United States. Now, there's no evidence they interfered with any election. You're allowed to be pro-Russia. You're allowed to be pro-anything you want in the United States. Saying things the government doesn't like, having unfashionable opinions or opinions that are out of step with Joe Biden's opinions, that is not a crime. You can spread pro-Russia propaganda if you want to. You can spread anti-Russia propaganda if you want to. You can say whatever you want, but not anymore. According to the indictment, the criminals in question, quote, wrote articles that contained Russian propaganda and disinformation. Huh? They also gave speeches and posted videos that annoyed the State Department. Here's one of them.
There's a discussion about Russian military border buildup on its border with Ukraine, and how this represents a terrible threat to Ukraine by Russians. But there is no acknowledgement of the history that took us to this place, how the U.S. overthrew, participated in facilitating the overthrow of a government in Ukraine that was friendly to the Soviet Union. Nor does it talk about the history of this relationship between Ukraine and Russia. This is an ongoing aggression. It did not just start. It's been going on for a while, but the U.S. government relies on the ignorance of the people in this country and much of the world that's facilitated by people like Zuckerberg.
So for whatever it's worth, we're not really sure who that guy is. We know he's American. Pretty sure that on a lot of issues, we likely would not agree with him. A lot of what he just said in that video seems to be true. But even if it weren't true, even if he was wrong, it would still be constitutionally protected speech. In a free country, which we had until recently, you are allowed by definition to have dumb opinions. Most of us do, but not anymore. So that man you just saw is facing 10 years behind bars for expressing views about Ukraine that the Biden administration doesn't want to hear. That's terrifying. Does no one else think that's terrifying? It is terrifying. And to that man's credit, whoever he is, he saw it coming. Here he is at a rally last month.
They have declared that black people are so stupid that it takes Russians to tell us that we are oppressed. I have never known a moment of black freedom for my entire life. I have never read of a moment since the beginning of a colonial mode of production where black people have been free. And yet they're saying that we are agents of some foreign power because we say black people must be free.
Okay, again, we're not defending that guy because we agree with all of his.
He's trying to make it clear he doesn't agree. But but he exposes a contradiction. I think like what the problem is, what Tucker Carlson is not saying is the state isn't worried about him spreading pro-Russian propaganda and pro-Russian propaganda and so forth. What they're worried about is that the leaders of the movement is spreading anti-imperialist propaganda, anti-colonial propaganda, and that's the real issue right there. And he, raises this point of this supposed to be, we're supposed to have free speech, and first of all, like he wouldn't consider himself, Chairman Mali Yeshiteli wouldn't consider himself an American, and I think many of us who are fighting against the American establishment, American imperialism, wouldn't consider ourselves so either. But the point I was going to make is that, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead. It'll come back to me. Though.
Yeah, let me go ahead. And I mean, to add to it, right? To be frank, he was actually saying he agreed with everything that he heard. But again, he's on a platform that is not his. So he still have to protect the white supremacy idea. So at some point he would say, I don't agree with that, but yeah, I agree with this. I mean, we live in a country where, people can now express themselves and all of those things. I mean, it's clear in there that there is nothing Omari said that is against America and that is for Russia. I mean, he just said something. He have to take Russia to explain to America of what America is doing to black people is inhumane. But if we black in America here, we tell America that what you are doing to us is inhumane, is colonialism, is slavery. You don't listen to us. So you have to take another outside nation to tell you that what you're doing is not right before you can listen, before you can pay ear. Okay? You have to take another country to tell America that Black people in America, they are also American. Black people in America, they built America. Black people in America, they also die for America. Black people in America also fight and protect America, just like how white America fight to protect America. So why are you treating white America different from Black America when they all are in the same army? They all are in the same Marine. They all are in the same U.S. Navy. They all are in the same Air Force. You send all of them to go to another country to overthrow another leader, to carry coup d'etat. In fact, Black people are the one being used, okay, by America to go into another country, especially African country, to carry on coup d'etat. So then, if Black people are doing all of these things for you, why should you treat them different? That is what Amadi was just trying to say, that you have to take another nation outside to put America in her place on how to treat Black people. So, and that was what he said, that America went against him because another country have put America on the map of the injustices that she's been doing. And that's what this reporter, try to admit to it, but he's also afraid. He's like, okay, we agree to that. Okay, we don't agree to this. But he made it clear that this man shouldn't even be in jail. He shouldn't even be in court. He shouldn't even be indicted for something that somebody said that he's just repeating of what this person said. Why should he be in court? That was what he was actually trying to say. But again, like I said, he's also on a platform that is not his, and he's trying to protect himself too. But it is clear in there that he was actually telling America, look, you are a hypocrite. Put this guy out.
I appreciate that, man. The chairman and the quote-unquote co-conspirators were in court on May 2nd. I think that was Tuesday. And are currently out on bond. So, just continue to, support. You can go to Hands Off Uhuru to support. I think it's handsoffuhuru.org. And the point I wanted to make before, too, is that Tucker Carlson was talking about free speech, having free speech in America. You only have free speech as long as you're not an African talking about liberation. If you're African and you're talking about liberation, you're talking about revolution, that free speech goes out the window. And I think that's another thing that is exposed with this indictment on the movement, because this is a movement who hasn't broken any crimes. I mean, quite until this indictment. Organization has been around since 1972, over 50 years. A little over 50 years, and all of a sudden you find that this group whose politics has never changed, whose practice has never changed, all of a sudden in 2023 you find that they're working with the FBI. I mean, working with the Russian government. Like, come on. So this is an example of the U.S. government suppressing the right to fight for freedom for African people. The actions of people like Nat Turner, Huey P. Newton, and Bobby Seale, they were considered criminal because they were fighting against an oppressive system. And so as long as we don't fight, and we're not talking about liberating ourselves from the colonial enterprise, you have all the free speech. You can have all the free speech you want. You can talk too. You can talk all you want, but when you're putting it into practice, that's also an issue. So theory and practice together is always going to be a threat to the colonizer. So with that being said, man, that's our weekly roundup. We're going to transition into the book reading. We're reading the ISIS papers, The Keys to the Colors by Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. You can go into the Google Drive, which I put in the chat. Let me see. I'll put it back in the chat in a second. But if you scroll in the chat, you'll see the Google Drive. It should be in our description as well. And you can read along with this. We're beginning on chapter 2, which is page 17. Page 17. I'm actually going to put it on the screen as well. So give me a second. I'm going to pull it up and share that for you all. So this is the ISIS papers, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. All right. Appreciate everybody for tuning in too. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already, and like and share this podcast, and book club, like and share. So let me pull this up, sharing my screen. All right. So you able to see that, Frank? You can hear me? Am I on
Yes.
mute? Oh.
Yes, I can see it. Yeah.
All right. So let's get into this. The origin of alienation, anxiety, and narcissism, published in 1980 of August. Black August. Dedication. This essay is dedicated to Genevieve Ikayete, a Nigerian journalist who, because of the profound pain of alienation, took her life on June 25th, 1978, while residing in the United States of America. The world lost a brilliant mind and a generous person. Shortly before her death, she stated, "My superstructure is solid. I need a formidable foundation." This essay is my contribution to our understanding of the destructive dynamic of alienation. Psychiatry as a discipline is floundering on its previously established conceptual and theoretical foundation imported from 19th century Europe. My continuing question to myself as a late 20th century precautionary in general in child psychiatry, practicing in the power capital of the world, is, can a greater understanding be achieved in the study of human behavior as it is organized and manifested in the world's dominant power system / culture? My answer is affirmative. We can derive an ever-increasing level of order out of the existing chaos, a diagnostic and statistical manual that gets heavier and wordier with each effort. Thereby, we can enhance our diagnostic and treatment skills and increase the possibility of prevention, allowing us to serve a suffering humanity better. In Have Astronomers Found God, Robert Jastrow states, there is a kind of religion in science. It is the religion of a person who believes there is order and harmony in the universe, and every event can be explained in a rational way as the product of some previous event. Every effort must have its cause. Jastrow continues, taking a quotation from Albert Einstein. The scientist is possessed by the sense of universal causation. As a social and behavioral scientist, I am convinced it is possible to understand in depth the patterns and system of behavior encountered in the individual and in the broad collective. My further conviction is that we can serve humankind maximally as behavioral scientists and physicians only when we adequately analyze the fundamental causation and logic of these patterns of behavior. Three major foci of attention in Western social and behavioral science, particularly in psychiatry, alienation, anxiety, and narcissism, are not unrelated, isolated syndrome abstractions as they have been discussed by Western social and behavioral scientists. These separately described phenomena are not only interrelated, but they have a common origin and cause. They are derivatives of the same causal dynamic. Although that causal dynamic has remained unidentified, the source of these three phenomena is the origin of Western civilization itself. Elian, do you want to stop there, or you want me to read a little more?
I mean, we can explain that, and we can continue.
Okay. I think it's an important point that's being made too by Dr. France Krauss Wilson in regards to well, maybe not a point, but she's making this sort of comparison to the behavioral sciences, right? Social and behavioral sciences to the natural sciences, where, you know, she has this belief, just how in the natural sciences, there's this belief that everything can be explained. Everything has an explanation. There's a cause and an effect, right? And through scientific inquiry, we can find out what those causes are, right? And develop some sort of solutions to develop a solution to the problem, if there's a problem that persists, or be able to build off, or through the understanding, we'll be able to create something new. And so with the social and behavioral sciences, this is, I guess she's kind of setting it up, saying, you know, this is my approach. And as a psychiatrist, what she is, this is her approach to trying to solve the problem of what I'm going to call colonialism. She doesn't use the term, but the problem of colonialism, the problem of racism, the problem of race relations, trying to understand this power dynamic and see, you know, what can we do to resolve these issues. And so that's how she's approaching this. And this is where her work is, you know, trying to figure out, like, what, you know, why are Europeans behaving the way that they are behaving with the rest of the non-white world. And so that's just something that, you know, I took. And so she's going to get into, and her focus in this chapter, though, is anxiety, right? Anxiety, what she says, anxiety, I can go right to it. Alienation, anxiety, and what's the other thing? It's the title of the chapter. But these things right here, let me just pull it. Anxiety, alienation, narcissism, yeah. And so she's looking at something that may be inherent in Western civilization and culture, that is bringing these things about. And she's going to get into the biological reasons, but I think that's going to come up in the next few paragraphs. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. Just to add to that, I think she was also saying that in order to accept someone's behavior, you have to analyze the pattern. Okay, so and in order to also understand, you know, the doing of someone, you have to understand the pattern of behavior, how consistent it is, okay, how it have evolved, okay, how it have been evolving with time period, and how those pattern of behavior have changed, but still carry on the same method of application and things. And this is what I think she was talking about here. So if we analyze the pattern of behavior of how they call it, European, or the colonizer, or the imperialists, if you study their pattern, you will get to understand that nothing have changed. Okay, the method of application, or being so sophisticated or comprehensive in its application, is what have changed over the year. So bear in mind, we are still talking about colonization, but the way in which it was applied during those days, it is not being applied, you know, at this time. But if you study the pattern of application, how it has been evolving, you will get to understand that colonization is still, you know, exists. So those that started it, their descendants are still carry on the pattern of colonization, but just in different form. The pattern of dehumanization, right? But just in different form. So if we understand that pattern of behavior, we will come to a point or a realization where we will disengage ourselves, okay, from the kind of system, okay, that have been perpetrated on us. So this is what she was trying to bring out to us, and trying to make us understand that, look, you can't understand racism. You can't understand racism if you don't understand the pattern and the behavior of which, in fact, what brought about racism. So if you want to understand the root cause of racism, for example, you have to go back and understand how it was involved and how it had been evolving up to this current time. All right, so you have to understand that if you talk about racism, or let's say colonization, right? If you talk about it in this current generation, most of them won't understand. Most of them who have not yet been conscious, or the unconscious mind will never get it, that in fact, they will be the one to go against you to say that no, slavery is not existing, or let's say colonization is not in America here. Those things, or there is nothing like internal colonization. But if you try to explain to them, that is by going back into history and studying the pattern and bringing it back to current event, they will understand. This is what she was trying to tell, or we have to understand the pattern, the methodology in which it has been applied.
No, absolutely, and that's what I think. Like that, this is the setup. These first few paragraphs is the setup of what she's going to be investigating in this chapter and throughout the book. Just going to the last chapter that I read, the last few sentences, these separately, excuse me, talking about alienation, anxiety, and narcissism. These separately described phenomena are not only interrelated, so they're interrelated, but they have a common origin and cause. They are the derivatives of the same causal dynamic. Although that causal dynamic has remained unidentified. So she makes that clear. Like, it has been unidentified through everybody's research, whether they're neglecting to find out what the causal relationship is, or they haven't been able to find it out, right? They haven't been able to find out, or they don't care to discover it. And then she says the source of these three phenomena is the origin of Western civilization itself. So that's interesting. So I'm gonna go into the next paragraph, alienation. In the color confrontation theory, I stated that racism, white supremacy, having begun as a form of alienation towards the self, now has evolved into the mostly highly refined form of alienation towards others as well. The color confrontation theory views all of the present battlegrounds in the world today as vivid reflections of this alienation towards others. The destructive and aggressive behavioral patterns displayed throughout the world by white peoples toward all non-white peoples is the evidence of the inner hate, hostility, and rejection they feel toward themselves, and of the deep self-alienation that has evolved from their genetic inadequacy. Man, I gotta stop just for a second, man. I want to try to read as much as possible, but yeah, let me just stop for a second. It won't take up too much time. But I think in this paragraph is very important. I wanted to stop because she points out, and I think clearly, but she just points out that there was something. This alienation existed within the European, like within Europe, between Europeans, within the individuals. There was this alienation among the individuals and among their society, right? And that alienation just got, exported to the rest of the world, right? Where they began to alienate other groups. But it began with their own alienation, this own self-hate, self-denial, of the individual and of the group, right? And I thought that was, important, like this inner hate she puts, this hostility and rejection they feel towards themselves. And they say to themselves, from one European, to another European, just thinking about it as a group too, not just as an individual. But I think, it does, but it starts with the individual as well. So I just wanted to point that out. Now, this last part though, I don't know if I completely agree with the genetic inadequacy part. Like she says, the hostility and rejection they feel toward themselves and of the deep self-alienation that has evolved from their genetic inadequacy. I don't know if it's biological. I know it's probably people in the chat that's going to be like, yeah, it's biological, but I don't know. I feel as though that there's something environmental about it. There's this lack of there's a lack of resources. There's a lot of things that's taking place in Europe that's causing all of this self-alienation, this pain, this depression, everything that they're dealing with, that they're going to export to the rest of the world. So I don't want to take a lot of time on it, because I think we can continue to have that discussion. But that's something that, maybe by the time I'm finished reading this, I've read it before, but maybe I'll have a change of heart, right? As we continue to investigate this. But Frank, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I may be wrong. Like I said, I don't really know, but I don't know, in terms of genetic, maybe we can say
I'm thinking genes. Like I'm thinking when genes, I'm thinking something biological. Like there has to be this conscious. They have to be conscious that there's this genetic inadequacy that they have that 1,000 years ago. That they, and who are they comparing that to? What genetically inadequate compared to who? Throughout their history.
So that genetic can be, right. For instance, like we African, right, and there's a fact. We African genetically, right, we quick to forgive, right. We quick to forgive, we quick to move on, and when it comes to resistance, we are very resilient people. We stand pressure, we stand tension, we know how to manage tension, and we know how to count tension down. But unlike them, I think it will be biological to them, like genetic, like they don't stand tension. Okay, they only reason for themselves, for their race. They don't reason, how to call it, based on the definition of a human being. They don't reason in our form. They try to say, we are all human, we are all this, but they don't apply it as to how black men, if a black person says, right, we are all human, we should all love, that black man will apply it. Okay, but for them, they don't really apply what they say. So and most of the time you see it with them. So I think what she was saying, I think if we want to add something to it, we will say yes, she's right in that form. Okay, because they will say things they don't apply to it. Okay, they will talk about love. The moment black people began to wake up, okay, began to separate themselves from them, that's the time you will see the white folks coming talking about the Bible. The Bible said we should love, or we are all created in the image of God. But they don't apply it. Okay, they don't apply that. It is only black men apply it. When black men say, we are created in the image of God, you will see another black man going against another black man, to make that black man to understand that no, don't separate yourself. We need to be one. The Bible says this, the Creator says this, and all of those things. But the white man, genetically, they don't speak. They don't apply what they speak.
Yeah, indeed. I think Brother Iapo makes a great point. I'm put that back up. In terms of genetic inadequacy, there's a reason they needed our people to do hard physical labor. And when I go out into the sun, I don't need slather chemicals on my body just so I can go outside. Like I think like with the contact, there's certain things that Europeans coming in, and not to say Europeans and Africans been in contact for thousands of years. That's nothing, you can go back thousands of years. But I'm saying in regards to like developing this relationship, this colonial relationship with African people, I think through that history, they began to measure themselves to the African. And this is where this idea of racial superiority comes from. But I guess like what I'm saying is like the initial, before the enslavement and colonization of African people, theft of indigenous people land, there was a relationship that Europeans had among themselves, going back to what Dr. Cress Wilson is saying about this this self-help, this self-hate, right? This inner hate that they had, where they treated each other in a particular way. And then it's been exported, and that self-help has been translated into the hate of other people. And I guess like what I'm saying is that this relationship that they had among themselves, like there wasn't this like consciousness. They weren't measuring themselves to other groups of people at that particular time. So even later, if this is going to take place, whereas this, because of this genetic inadequacy, I just don't know if it's the actual foundation. And it could be. Maybe I just need a better understanding on
yeah, and just to add to that, what Dennis says here, he says that justification is God has given them the right to civilize the world, to take the resources, to rape the women, etc. Is this not the thinking of a sick and twisted people? And exactly, and this is what exactly that I was talking about. Like, these are the same people, like you said, during the 1884 Berlin Conference, when they were training missionary, okay, purposely giving them different training. These are the same people that went on the African continent to talk about, the love of God, but they did not love the people they were preaching the love of God to. Okay, and this is what I'm saying, that it is only the black man. If a black man tell you about the law of God, he's going to do exactly what he's telling you. But a white man, if it's a race that will tell you about the law of God and then go and do something different. They went on the African continent, they go in different nations, and they preach about love. And these are the missionaries who are there at the same time working as FBI, working as CIA, sending information to their government overseas. And these are the same people that will be in our country or doing research about your mineral resources. These are the same people that will be talking about the love of God, but at the same time, putting people together to go against one another in order to accomplish their mission. So, I mean, and it have been consistent. So that is why, I agree with what she's saying, but logically, like these people, man, like it's true. What she's saying over there is true, to be frank.
Yeah. And I'm with Dr. Emerson Wilson. I think this is an important discussion. I'm with Dr. Emerson Wilson, right? And Kwame Ture, he talked about this as well, where even whether it's the case or not, whether it's biological, environmental, it's still whatever the cause is, doesn't change the fact that Europeans politically and economically are dominating African people, and something needs to be done about it. So historically, they have made themselves the enemy to African livelihood, African existence, and so we can have the debate, but we have to understand what our reality is today. However, whatever theories we come up with. So with that being said, though, let me try to get two more paragraphs in. I know we are almost at the top of the hour. So my extended definition of alienation centers around the recognition that it is a fundamental behavioral dynamic in Western civilization and culture. Alienation is a powerful centrifugal, genetic, psychological, and societal dynamic that over time drives human beings further and further away from all effective, meaningful, emotionally supportive, and truthful communication amongst one another. The alienation dynamic increasingly forces people away from one another as Western civilization and culture evolves, as seen through each successive generation since its origin, including Greek civilization and the Roman Empire. Alienation is the very same dynamic that pushes human beings away from respectful and harmonious relationships with the physical environment, leading to the pollution and destruction of the planet. Most important, the alienation dynamic forces the individual away from all manifestations of self-understanding and self-respect, including the most fundamental respect for one's genetic makeup. I can agree with that, though. you know, I think that can be, but that's developed through this alienation. But I would say one thing though, it is conducive to the system of colonial capitalism. This alienation that existed. I feel just, you know, reading this and thinking through it, that existed before the development of what they call modern capitalism, right? The conditions in Africa, I don't think was conducive to the type of economic system that the Europeans imposed on the rest of the world, because there wasn't this alienation that existed. You know, we had these collectivism, and there was markets, there was industry, but there was a collectivism. There wasn't this, I'm trying to, you know, control this land for my personal benefit, right? Everything, even if there was land or property, that land and property still was controlled or owned by the community. It was just siphoned off and said, hey, yeah, this land, you can use this land for your personal use, but it's still owned and controlled by the community. And if there's a decision that others need to use a certain portion of land, then there will be a collective decision on that. But there wasn't this exploitation that was taking place, right? That was taking place in European society way before the advent of modern capitalism. The system of capitalism grew out of the feudal system in Europe. So yeah, but you know, this alienation, I kind of just like unite with that. This last sentence, and let me pass it over to you. I know we have a few minutes, and if we have time, I'll give another thought.
I mean, just to add to the alienation, yeah, just to add to like alienation, right? Like she said, it also make you to not to have self-understanding of, you know, oneself. So once you are being alienated of your heritage, of your existence, of who you were before the 1600, because we were people, we were somebody, okay, we were nation, okay, we had tribes, we had languages, okay, before the 1600, all right, but they take our history from the 1600 and then they disregard what happened before the 1600. So right there, they have cut off, you know, certain thing about us that we don't even know who we are. And this is what, you know, exactly she was talking about. And that also deal with, again, because we rely on a system, okay, that narrate our story, that read our story, and all of those things. So and due to that, and if we continue to rely on them, that's how they will continue to disengage, and you know, our existence of our identity of who we were before the 1600. And this is why, again, she's actually trying to say here, in my understanding, that listen, we cannot alienate ourselves, and you know, from what happened before the 1600.
Yeah, and just to, you know, the last point, I agree with that. You know, the last point I will make, just going back to something I can unite with this genetic, you know, makeup. That the point that she makes in the last sentence, she said, most important, the alienation dynamic forces most important, the alienation dynamic forces the individual away from all manifestations of self-understanding and self-respect, including the most fundamental respect for one's genetic makeup. So, you know, just the order of things, man, I'm kind of like looking at. So, like, I think through this self-alienation, you know, this what do you call, like, self-image. You know, you develop this self-image, and you develop this what's the other thing, like your self-esteem and all of that, right?
Individualism, those things come in.
Yeah, you begin to have all of these ideas about yourself. And I think a lot of that has to do with, I mean, think about it even personally, when things are not going right in your life, right? Or at least we perceive that things aren't going right. We may be feeling down, depressed, stressed out, and so forth. Think of how we begin to feel about ourselves, right? We begin to think that there's something about us, maybe, you know, like, is it something psychologically, like, why can't I get over this, or something, you know, or, you know, why I don't have a lot of friends. Is it something? Is the way I look? You begin to start to have these images of yourself. And that's why it's so important that we control our images, right? The Black is Beautiful movement, right? In the 60s, right? We was pushing back against somebody else's self-image. But going back to just like this image of themselves and all of the things that they were experiencing in Europe, which can go back thousands of years, but I'm going to connect the recent enslavement of Africans and colonialism, which happened during this quote unquote age of discovery. We know they ain't discovered a damn thing. But what they call the age of discovery, the age of exploration, when they went around the world. Prior to that, the reason why they went across the Atlantic is because they couldn't go east, right? They couldn't go east because of the Africans, the Ottoman Empire and so forth, wouldn't let them do trade, right? So they had to find another trade route. And all of that they was going through, and they came out of the bubonic plague. So they was dealing with all of these economic issues, right? Extreme poverty. Half the population died during the 14th century because of the bubonic plague. So just think about the image that they have of itself. So this is where I think, like, okay, now they begin to measure themselves with other groups of people when they go around the world and begin to say, hey, is there something deficient about me? Because they talked about the Africans and the Native Americans in a positive way at first. When they came in contact with them, they talked about these civilizations, and then they began to develop, which I think was a defense mechanism, develop these ideas about other groups of people, so that they could. I know, I kind of. But we're going to continue this, man. I think it's a lot. I know we at the top of the hour. Any final thoughts? Man?
No, man. No, we good. I mean, you kind of summarize it. And you know what? I was saying something yesterday, and I even posted on my Facebook, and I said, I have a question. Who invented credit? Yeah, we invented credit. And I said, if anybody answer it, I only need 2 words. If anybody answer it, you have a prize. And up to now, no one has ever come to answer it. And the reason why I said that, right?
Put it in the chat. Who invented credit? Put it in the chat.
Yeah. Because the reason why I said that, everywhere these white folks went, they took credit for it. They did not give the credit to the people that invented it, that built that place, that inhabited that place, that cultivated that place, that discovered that place, that lived there. Okay? But everywhere they went, they took credit for everything. They discovered it. They invented it. They saw this. In fact, they discovered everything that they saw there. Even the human being they saw there, the living thing they saw there, they discovered it. So they took credit for everything. That's how, I mean, it kept my mind. I was like, man, these people. Yeah.
Nah, absolutely, man. Hey, well, appreciate everybody too for joining in to our podcast. We'll be back next Saturday at 10 a.m. This is the month of Malcolm X born day. He was born this month, so there's going to be a lot going on. There may be a Saturday or so this month that we're not able to hold the podcast because Malcolm X, I know his born day is on a Friday. African Liberation Day is coming up, so there's going to be a lot going on. But stay tuned. We're going to keep you updated. You subscribe to the channel, you'll get updates on when's our next podcast. This evening, I'm going to be doing a podcast at 9 talking about the Jordan Neely situation, or his death, I should say. Briefly, if anybody want to tune into that, definitely come back on, but it will be there for replays, so you can tune in at any time, man. But appreciate everybody for stopping by. Continue to fight for all those who are in the struggle until liberation is attained, man. To freedom is won. All right, so peace. Till next time.